Hello there, welcome back to the Steel City Media podcast, and today we're going to be doing a review of Stephen King's Wizard and Glass. This is book 4 in the Dark Tower series, and before we get into it, I must say up front, there's going to be massive spoilers in this, so if you haven't read Wizard and Glass, I would probably click off this video because we're basically going to go over everything that happens in this book and also spoil pretty much a lot that happens in the first 3 books as well. So keep in mind that I have not read the whole Dark Tower. This is my first read through, so I don't know what's going to happen after. I mean, I'm about a third of the way through Wolves of the Kala right now, but as for the overall story, obviously still have a ways to go. So keep in mind major spoilers, but let me just say right off the bat that Wizard and Glass, for me, was by far and away the best Dark Tower book. Just in my opinion, I could get how some people wouldn't like it, and for me, I was a little weary going into Wizard and Glass because I'm not someone who really loves flashbacks. Flashbacks kind of take you out of the story, and sometimes they can drag on, and particularly this one where it's like 80 or 90% of this book is a flashback. So for me, I was definitely hesitant going into it, but the flashback itself, I feel like, was better than anything we've encountered thus far in the main storyline. I liked Drawing of the Three a lot. That was my favorite out of the first 3. But this one, for me, is far better. And this one is, whenever people describe the Dark Tower as a fantasy series, this is the book for me that really felt the most fantasy and most Western, of course. And it's much more a traditional Western than all the other books I've read thus far. So really excited to get into this one. So obviously we start off on Blaine the monorail from the Wastelands. There was that cliffhanger. And, I felt like for most of the Wastelands, Eddie kind of took a back seat. Eddie didn't really have much to do in the Wastelands. And overall, I wasn't a big fan of the Wastelands. There's a lot of people out there that say the Wastelands is their favorite book in the series, and I guess it can make sense from a standpoint of if you don't like flashbacks, you're not going to like Wizard and Glass, so then okay, Wastelands is your favorite. But even then, I'm still taking Drawing of the Three over the Wastelands. But like I said, Eddie just didn't really have much to do in that book. But the beginning of this book, Eddie really gets to shine. He gets kind of one of his big triumphant moments of the series so far. He had a very, very big role in the Drawing of the Three. He took kind of a backseat, like I said, in the Wastelands. And in this one, he's the one who defeats Blaine the monorail, which is, I had no idea what was going to happen with Blaine. I was very interested to see. It was very much what you would consider a page turner, just to see how this whole situation unfolded. And he's able to basically defeat Blaine with just these crappy jokes from New York that they would tell as kids, and I thought that was a really fun way to explore this, and I could probably make a video just about Blaine, the character itself, and just kind of do a deep dive on Blaine. But I just found that was so fascinating that was how this supercomputer was defeated through. Basically, I think they say in the book that it was illogic, not logic that defeated it, illogic. So I did like that. So after they get off Blaine and Topeka, you clearly get hints of the Stand. And I know a lot of people in their mind consider this to be the Stand world, like from the book The Stand, which of course I have read. But I don't know if, again, I haven't read the whole Dark Tower series, so I don't know if this is going to be revealed later on in the series, but I know that there's just so many different universes that this could be just like a version of Earth where Captain Trips did hit, but it's not necessarily the same universe as the one we read in The Stand, because I know Flag is there, I know we see Flag, but there are distinct differences about this world that I don't recall from The Stand proper. There's different car models that they don't recognize, like Eddie and Susanna and Jake, they don't recognize from our world. The Kansas City baseball team is called the Monarchs as opposed to the Royals, which is obviously not in our world, and obviously that wasn't brought up in the stand. So again, I don't know if that's going to get mentioned later on, but I don't know if it's exactly the same world that's in the Stand novel, but it's definitely a very, very similar world. But they go on, they're walking down the highway, they sit down before this big, I think it's described as like this big glass or mirror-like structure. They start their fire, and this is where Roland starts telling his tale of his youth. And he's 14 when the events of this go down. It just shows you how different the culture of Gilead is. The fact that he did all this stuff at the very young age of 14. And I know he was still considered very young to be a gunslinger. I think he's the youngest gunslinger to ever exist. But just the fact that his father trusted him to go out with his friends and do this all at this young age shows you how different the culture is as compared to us. We're not considered adults till 18 here in the United States. So I found that very interesting. But this is where we get into Hambry. And but before we get into Hambry, we have to touch on, I absolutely love how King puts us into this world, this the flashback world. He doesn't hold your hand. He just kind of throws you right into this meeting with Rhea of the Coos and Susan Delgado. And I have to say right off the bat that Rhea of the Coos is one of my favorite Stephen King villains. I'm someone who, I think if witches are done very well, they can be some of the most terrifying horror figures ever done. You go back, if you've ever seen Rob Eggers' The Witch, back, I think 2016 that came out. That is absolutely horrifying, and that's like a case where witches are done very well, and I think that Rhea of the Coos is a very, very good example of the witch trope done perfectly. I mean, she is absolutely horrifying, and Stephen King obviously has the reputation of the horror writer. This character is what brings the horror element to Wizard and Glass, because outside of her, there's really not much horror going on in this book. So she brings a lot of that. Just her descriptions, she's such a disgusting, vile creature, and the way she talks to people, the way she thinks of people is just so demented and sickening, and I just love it because I love a really well-written villain, and I haven't seen King do a witch before, so I really, really enjoyed her, and the meeting between her and Susan is one of my favorite parts of the book because you really just get to see how vile this character is. Big credits to Frank Muller. I listened to the audiobook for this, and Frank Muller, the performance he gives for this book is the best audiobook experience I've ever had, and also his performance of Rhea might just be my favorite in general, because that was the way he did her voice was perfect, really brought her to life. And Stephen King even dedicated Wolves of the Calla to Frank Muller after he passed. So we meet up with Roland. He meets Susan, and they already have chemistry right off the bat whenever they meet. I believe they have a little kiss, and she says to him don't act like you've met me before if we meet again, because she's already betrothed to the mayor. Hartthorne is his name. He's the mayor of this town, Hambry. So it's already setting up. I mean, it's already been described by many people. There's a quote from Romeo and Juliet at the beginning of this book. You definitely have the Romeo and Juliet vibes going on right off the bat between Roland and Susan, because it's kind of like this forbidden love thing going on. And whenever they do eventually start seeing each other, it has to be completely in secrecy. So, and then, so skip forward a little more. We meet the three coffin hunters who I really enjoyed. I mean, they add a lot to this book. They're basically the main antagonists outside of Rhea, I guess. You have Jonas, DePape, and Reynolds. They are the three that are kind of the arch rivals of Roland's group of Cuthbert and Elaine. So the thing that I like about Jonas a lot is he's this failed gunslinger. So he kind of knows about how Gilead is. He knows about like the lore of the gunslingers, and he tried to become one, but he failed and was sent away. So it kind of gives him like this extra chip on his shoulder with Roland, because Roland is such a young age and he was able to become a gunslinger and Jonas was not. So I think that right there gives him a lot of motivation to not like Roland, on top of the fact that he was humiliated in the bar scene, which is, again, another fantastic scene where they basically have this big standoff. This is a classical Western trope where you have someone pointing a gun at someone, and like just everyone has a gun held up to their head or a knife, and it's just done so well. That's when we meet Shimi, and if you've read The Stand, Shimi, I think, is like basically the same exact character of Tom Cullen. They're both mentally challenged people, but they're both like just so unbelievably nice and like loyal to their friends and willing to do whatever. So Shimi, fantastic character. Same as Tom Cullen. I love them both. Shimi is great in this book, and I didn't expect to like Shimi. I didn't think he was really going to play that big of a part in this book, because I thought he was just going to be a part of that bar scene to set up the main feud with the Coffin Hunters and Roland's gang, but no, he's actually pretty important later on in the book. So, they have their big standoff. The sheriff comes in and he's like, "Let's go. We got to go take care of this." So they talk it out. They go their own separate ways. So this is where the book kind of slows down a little, and you get to see some of Roland and Susan, their relationship starting. And like I said earlier, they have to do it basically all in secrecy. Let's talk about Cordelia, Susan's aunt, who early on in the book, I felt like she really was kind of trying to look out for Susan, but it becomes very clear like around the middle of the book that she is just using Susan. And you can go back and forth on what you think of her, but I just think overall she was trying to use Susan. She knew that once Susan married the mayor, that the mayor was going to pay Cordelia a lot and give her like lands and horses and stuff. So she's pretty awful. She's one of the more evil characters in this, because she's just using her niece completely as a pawn in her game to get her payment and her lands back. So she's awful. I didn't really like her at all. Anytime she showed up, I kind of cringed a little. She's just so overbearing, and King does this with a lot of different characters throughout his book. There's his books, sorry. You look at The Stand, look at Franny's mom, how she was like so overbearingly awful and just like treated her daughter like crap. And like The Dead Zone, even Johnny's mom is very overbearing in this way and just kind of so obnoxious. And I feel like King puts these types of characters in his books a lot, where it's like this just very overwhelmingly hateful character that we're just not meant to like at all. And she's just terrible. And as Roland and Susan's relationship mature, there's obviously going to be some animosity that grows between Roland and his friends, because he ends up starting to spend a lot of his time with Susan, Susan's her name, and instead of them. And he kind of starts to shriek off his duties, kind of starts to make them vulnerable, because he starts to just overlook certain things going around in the town because he just wants to spend his time with Susan. And people that say that this bugs them because like they just fell in love too quick, and there are definitely some instances in King's books where characters just kind of fall in love way too fast. I think a really good example of that is Eddie Dean and Susanna. Like, they just kind of fall in love instantly. And it makes a little more sense with these two because they're 14 and 16. Like, they're just, Roland's just hitting puberty. Susan is like in the middle of puberty. When you're at that very ripe young age, especially when you got like the sexual appetite waking up, if you want to put it like that, it's very, very easy to see how you could fall in love, especially for Roland. I mean, when you're that young, you're just starting to become a man, and you have this beautiful woman that cares for you, like, you're gonna fall in love instantly. Like, it makes a lot of sense to me. I get why for some people it could take them out of it, because it's like a love at first sight thing, but you got to keep in mind how young these people are. So they do have a big affair, and I think it is one of the better parts of this this book, because obviously it's pretty sensitive subject matter when you think about it. The fact that we're reading about a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old having sex, I could get how it can make some people uncomfortable, but King is not vulgar about it. And this is a thing that happens. People in that age range, they do have sex. It happens. So I don't think King is overly vulgar about it. I don't think he goes into like horrific detail where it's going to make you gross out, like that one scene in It. We all know what scene I'm talking about. It's nothing like that. It's very, very sweet. And so, skipping through all the stuff that happens with Citgo and the oil tankers is, for me, what makes this book even more better or more great, because it really paints this picture, makes it a lot more epic, because it's not just about what's going on in Hamry, between this little feud between Roland's group and Jonas's group. It's not just about that. There's also a bigger picture going on here, where you kind of have like a glimpse into the world politics that are going on here, where this town is lying about the resources they have, and they're supplying them to the Interbarony's enemy, John Farson, which not really sure about John Farson. Again, I think we're probably going to learn more about this later on. I've heard some people say that it's Flag. I've heard some people say that it's a different entity than Flag. So again, I don't know enough about Farson to really go in on him. But the way I see it is these coffin hunters are kind of like on his bankroll. There's also this other guy, Latigo, who works for Farson as well, who's kind of there to get the oil tankers. And all that stuff is fantastic, because it shows you that there's like this greater strife going on in this world. You get to see the politics going on. We kind of learn later on that Susan's dad knew about this and was trying to like stop it, and that's why they ended up killing him, because Farson was giving them a lot more money than what the Interbaronies were. And Cordelia knew about it, and that just makes her character that much more evil. And so then we get to like the final big climax of this storyline, and it's Roland and his gang going against I think it's he says like 100 men or something like that, but the way they win is they lead like Latigo and Jonas's men down into Eyebolt Canyon, which has the Thinny. And if you don't know what the Thinny is, basically like this it's kind of hard for me to describe, because I'm still not 100% sure exactly what the Thinny all does, because my recollection is that the Thinny, what I thought it was like a teleportation, I don't know if you'd call it a device or just like a rift that takes you from world to world, but this Thinny that is in Eyebolt Canyon actually kills all these guys. Like they trap them and then lead them through the canyon into this Thinny, and you have Latigo basically just watching all his men get annihilated in front of his eyes. It's one of the most chilling scenes of the book. As for Jonas and his gang, DePape gets shot, I think, in the head. So, I liked DePape in this. I mean, he's kind of just Jonas's henchman, but he's kind of like the guy who does the dirty work for Jonas. He kills the mayor in a very gruesome way, like gouges his eyeballs out, and then they try to frame Roland's group for doing it. So I kind of liked him in that way, that he's like the dirty work guy, but he gets shot in the head by Roland, and then eventually Jonas does as well. But this is where the book, we all knew this was going to happen. We all knew that it was going to be a very tragic ending. Obviously, in the current storyline with the new quartet, obviously Susan's not around, so something happened to her. I think we all kind of knew it was building up to this, and the way that she is killed is just like terrifying. Again, going back to Rhea, all throughout what I just described here, she is kind of just watching this go on through the magical orb, or they call it, I think, I can't remember exactly what they call it, but it's the peach, I think, is like, it's the orb, the big orb that the coffin hunters gave to her, and she's just watching all this stuff go on and using it to kind of manipulate people. Another great scene was when Sheeny goes up to see Rhea, and I think he pisses himself because he's so scared, and rightfully so. I think anyone would in that situation. So yeah, she basically like just puts a spell on the entire town, and like puts the whole town under this trance. And that's how I read it, is that she basically just used her powers to like brainwash everyone to be like her followers, and they go and do their version of the harvest, and they put Susan up on this pyre and set it ablaze, and they chant "Char You Tree." Very, very haunting to hear that, "Char You Tree." How Frank Muller did it was, again, brilliant. So yeah, I mean, that's the end of her. It's heartbreaking, really it is, because they were so close to getting away with it. And Roland in his mind even thought earlier, like, if I knew she was in any real danger, I would go after her, whenever she's taken away by Reynolds. But he's like, in my mind, there's no immediate danger for her, so we're good to carry on with the mission. And that decision by Roland ends up costing Susan's life, because he forgot about Rhea. He didn't take her into the equation. And she takes over the whole town and does that. And it's fantastically done. Roland sees all this through the peach orb that they took from Rhea, and his brain is like understandably like melting. And that's pretty much wraps for the flashback. That's basically all that goes down, and it's fantastic. I really, really, really enjoyed that. And so next, we come back to the new quartet, and this is where Roland reveals another really, really disturbing part of his past, because, we all know that Roland is very emotionless, and he tries to not really get himself involved with that stuff. And, Susan alone, the way she died, would be enough to understand that. But what happens with his mom, obviously, is like just absolutely heartbreaking. If you did that to your mom, it would be hard to not contemplate suicide. And the fact that Rhea basically put this like trick, this mind trick on him to kill his mom, it's heartbreaking. You can see why Roland is such a broken and damaged character, why he's so shut off with his emotions, because he goes to like see his mom when he gets back from this adventure, and she has like this gift made for him, this belt. And when he walks in, he's like, "Mom, where are you?" And he turns around, and it's Rhea, and he shoots Rhea. But it turns out it wasn't Rhea. It was actually his mom, and Rhea had put like a spell on him. So he killed his mom. Absolutely just tragic, so sad. And whenever they go, so back to the new quartet, when they go into this, so this is where the book, for me, took a turn for just like bad, like crazy, not bad, just insane, where it lost me a little bit whenever they do the Wizard of Oz stuff, because I think I need to do a little more like analysis on that part. How they got to Oz. Again, this is all King's just sandbox. He's just doing whatever. But for me, it was kind of a little meta. And I know it gets even more meta as the series goes on. But they go into like the Emerald Castle, like from Wizard of Oz. And they meet Flag. And it's the stand version of Flag, because he has on the jean jacket with the buttons that he was wearing. And he has the TikTok man. I can't remember what his real name was. They say it. I think it's Andrew Quick or something like that. He's there. I don't really know why King had to bring him along, because he's there for like 5 seconds, and then I think he gets shot in the head. So he really didn't do anything in this book at all. I don't know why King saved him from the wastelands. That didn't make much sense to me. But the interaction with Flag is great. He really just talks about how he was always a part of Roland's life. He was there as Martin. He was Walter. And now he's Flag. There's just so many different personas of him. And that's why he's one of King's most interesting characters. So The thing that I really liked about this interaction is like how all the guns are of Flag's world, but Jake's Ruger is not of Flag's world. So Jake's Ruger can actually like kill Flag if he's shot with it. So like when Roland goes to grab Jake's gun, Flag like panics and just like disappears because he knows if he gets shot with that, he's done. So I really liked that. And that's basically the end. I mean, I think there's a little stuff after that where they like find the food, but that's basically the end of Wizard and Glass. So, I've been rambling. I don't know how long this has been, but if you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. Feel free for sure to leave your thoughts on Wizard and Glass. Did you like it? Where does it rank for the Dark Tower books? And please, if you are going to comment, please don't spoil books 5 through 7, because again, I haven't gotten that far. And stay tuned for my Dead Zone review. Just finished the Dead Zone a couple days ago, so I will be releasing a Dead Zone review. So that's it for this one for Wizard and Glass. Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe. See ya.